Today, we're going to talk about the giant big housing legislation that's coming down the pike and a topic that might seem unrelated, but actually is bigger than I think anybody's paying attention to, which would be the privacy and flock camera issues. So, welcome to your time to chat with Lee Brown. I'm putting my glasses on because we're going to start today talking about the big housing legislation that you have heard about everywhere. The Senate has passed the housing affordability bill. This bill was a mashup of what came from the House and what came from the Senate. They've come to committee, and this passed with huge bipartisan support. You've seen a ton of headlines celebrating this. And then, if you want to know what's in the bill, we'll talk about that very briefly because I think you should know what's in giant legislation. This one, though, I got to give kudos to whoever of the young political class wrote this. It's actually not full of pork. So, high five, people. High five for staying on task. Let me give y'all a quick rundown of what's in the bill because I know you have some interesting questions about this. Feel free to drop it in the chat and I'll do my best to check over there. The first, I put my glasses on because I got to read all the different sections. There is first in Title 1 section, a stronger HUD oversight of housing counseling. So, what this means is that we're going to see a different opinion coming from HUD that helps setting some guidelines for what are called point access block buildings. So basically that means a square rectangle that has a single stairway that comes in the middle. You see some of these in condos and in apartments, but they're looking to make them more popular because they're smaller multifamily. And I think those are really good for a lot of communities. And it does do a really good thing. It exempts USDA properties from environmental review. That's if it's infill housing. So, for example, you have a whole neighborhood where one lot was left over or some house burned down, it's in a USDA zone. That means that they wouldn't have to go through environmental review when it's in the middle of existing areas. So that cleans up some headaches and red tape, which is really good. And the one I really like in Title One, it requires the recipients of CBDG money, that's Community Development Block Grant money. It requires them to publish a searchable public database of undeveloped land, which means in a town like Spencer, North Carolina, in Rowan County, just north of me, where you have a lot of infill lots, they, as a town, do receive CDBG funding because of the high level of poverty in the area. Well, this would require a publishable database of undeveloped land, which is an opportunity for somebody to come in and put in a house that fits the community, that might be affordable, that provides opportunity for somebody else. So there's some good stuff in there. Number two, building more in America. And we're going to come back to this one because this is the one that says that CDBG money can fund new affordable housing. It creates a $200 million competitive grant program that says, hey, if your local town is increasing housing supply by fixing your permitting and zoning issues, you can get money. And also, this one's kind of hilarious. This will fund the conversion of vacant commercial or industrial buildings into affordable housing. Y'all, there are so many communities in the US that have looked at this, and it is wildly cost prohibitive. And the $200 million ain't but a drop in the bucket when you're talking about taking an existing building that was maybe a textile mill. Here in Cabarrus County, we have former textile mills. When you wanted to convert those to housing, you start realizing there's environmental things with lead-based paint, asbestos, lead pipes, and you've got just so many things going on. These are uninsulated windows, really tall ceilings. There's no insulation because when they were built. And then you think about turning it into housing. Well, now you've got to add bathrooms, so you got to add plumbing throughout, and kitchens, that's plumbing throughout. Oh, you got to have vents for the kitchen, so now you got to add vents. And then you got to have ingress and egress, and then you got to think about emergency exits. And you realize residential properties are wildly different than commercial and industrial properties. And it doesn't mean that I don't love seeing a former mill converted into condos and apartments, but it's wildly expensive. So I'm intrigued to see where that one's going to go. That the idea is great, but if you're the person who thinks you can take a 50-story skyscraper and turn it into apartments, then you may not have done a lot of building in your life and you don't realize how expensive that is. And then, of course, there's going to be grant money in this one for pre-reviewed housing. They want towns to come up with a package of pre-approved floor plans, which makes my stomach hurt because I can't stand cookie cutter, even though I've been in real estate 26 years and I've sold plenty of it. So this particular section is the one that has the home builders a little concerned about the outcome because it looks good from the federal level, but everything is going to boil down to what the locals are and are not willing to do when it comes to permits and zoning. So if you're in a county that's been overrun with building and you've elected officials who've said, we're done with this, we're tired, we don't have too much concrete, we need a minute to absorb what we have, those same elected officials are going to see this and say, oh, but there's grant dollars available. So maybe we'll loosen it up so that we can let more building in without understanding the long term implications. I believe that we should have controls at the local level when it comes to permitting and zoning, y'all. And call me crazy, but I do think that every part of this country is different and should be allowed to look different and feel different. So that one's an interesting section there. I really don't, that $200 million is just kind of hilarious to me, but I guess I've read too much legislation to think that that's not much money. Number 3 might be my favorite one. Y'all know that for a long time, I have been a very loud advocate for anybody that wants to live in a trailer house, mobile home, modular home, manufactured housing, because trailers are the original affordable housing in this country. And they have been put down, made fun of, and treated very poorly, y'all. Because if you think about it, any comedian on the planet can make fun of people who live in trailer houses. They call them a certain name, and I won't say it because it's ugly, but they don't get any pushback for that. They get laughter. You talk about anybody else in any kind of jest, and you'll be accused of a hate crime and being canceled. So finally, we're seeing some improvements when it comes to a housing choice that people make. I mean, come on, y'all. Nothing wrong with living in a mobile home, manufactured house, trailer house. In fact, some of them are higher quality than the stick built because they're built to federal code undercover, just saying. So, anyway, Title III says that there is a huge improvement. They're eliminating the permanent chassis requirement for manufactured homes. If you've never sold a trailer house, and you should know that's the biggest issue that we run into is the permanent chassis, because there's all these rules when it comes to the loans. So this is great. It does set some HUD energy standards, which gives me a little bit of pause because I don't know what standards are going to set. And it does raise the FHA housing loan limits, which means more people can get approved for the house that they want. And there are new price grants for 7 years to repair and preserve manufactured home communities. By the way, if you live in an area that has eliminated trailer parks and mobile housing by right, then you should be speaking up because we should have all kinds of housing in all communities. And I'm a big fan. Really glad they fixed this. That improves the opportunity for people. Because, by the way, I should add this in. A lot of people that choose to live in a trailer house are wanting to be a little further out from a city center. They like more rural living. These do tend to be in more rural areas, I mean, unless you're in Arizona or Florida where you'll have the areas in your old people communities that have super tiny lots. But here in my area of North Carolina, they tend to be further out. Well, this might be your only way to get an acre or two of land is to buy one with a trailer on it. So this means more funding is going to be available when it comes to financing. So yay. Title IV talks about funding some studies. Okay, y'all know that money's going to just go get wildly wasted, but all right. And then we have an improvement there, though, in Title IV about fixing some of these voucher inspection requirements. So, what you should know is that if you're a landlord and you say, you know what, I want to participate in the housing voucher program, also known as Section 8, because you're a fan of affordable rentals and you want to help support disabled veterans, who a lot of disabled veterans use the housing voucher program. A lot of elderly people do. It's not just what you see in the movies, y'all. There are really good people who need a help. And this is a really good program in a lot of ways. However, if you're that landlord, you find out very quickly that you want to participate, but then you hit the inspection hurdle and you have to wait for an inspection. And that can mean weeks and weeks of vacant time while you wait for an inspector who's not under any kind of time constraints to come wander around and look at your unit. So they're going to improve that process here by saying that you can automatically meet those voucher inspection requirements if you passed one in the past year. So you could have the inspection done and have that shortened vacancy time, which might encourage more landlords to take a look at the housing voucher program, because it's not everything that you've been told in some of those myths. Number 5 talks about some program reform. It's reauthorization of the home program and does authorize the CDBGDR, that's the Community Development Block Grant, disaster recovery program, which we've needed in Western North Carolina, and we got that money sent in that direction. However, it's been a little tricky to access it, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Title VI talks about veterans and housing, and it adds more disclosures to the applications and adds more paperwork. So yay for more paperwork for veterans. I mean, come on, y'all, quit celebrating that. We don't need more paperwork. In fact, my favorite form we ever had in real estate, some of y'all old guard might remember one time they introduced a form called the Paperwork Reduction Act, which was a piece of paper they added to the package that you had to sign saying they were going to reduce paper, and they never did, but that's fine. The one good thing here in Title VI is that veterans who are considered disabled veterans, they have disability benefits. In the past, those have been used as income to determine eligibility for whether or not they can get into what's called supportive housing. And supportive housing is for our disabled vets who need additional care and they need to have some wraparound services. If they counted their disabled veteran benefits, they weren't qualified for the services they need. So now they're going to take that income out. That's a really necessary improvement. And it feels kind of weedy and really small. But I live in North Carolina, y'all, and this is the state that has the most veterans of any state in the US. We've had every base here except for Space Coast. I mean, Space Force needs to put a base here somehow, I guess. But we have a lot of disabled veterans, and of all the people who should be receiving a boost, it's our disabled veterans. And I just want to point out, my dad just got his disabled veteran status. Yes, he was in Vietnam 60 years ago, and they just now approved his disability for Agent Orange. So it only took 60 years. So yeah, if you want to know why I stay a little wound up about the VA and VA programs, it hits a little close to home for this girl. All right, so Title VII talks about oversight and accountability and requires the HUD secretary to testify annually. That one's kind of hilarious to me because what's that going to do? You know, all these hearings are just a chance for all these elected officials to go viral. That's why they act the fool in them, and it's not doing anything. That is such a circus, but whatever. Great. The HUD secretary gets to testify. Title VIII, studies and coordination, another money grab here, interagency coordination in several government accounting office studies, including one on barriers to affordable housing. I'm going to come back to barriers to affordable housing just in a minute, because when you talk about funding studies, y'all know that is a honeypot and people are going to dip their hands in it and take out as much as they want of your taxpayer dollars with no good at all. But it is a bill coming out of Congress, so you knew they would have to find a way to dip their little toe in. And then we have Title IX, community banks. This one is not super connected to housing, but it does make it easier for smaller banks and for credit unions to provide mortgages. So I'm in favor of that because y'all know I'm allergic to big things. Title X, homeownership for Main Street America. Now, I want you to pay attention to something in the text here, because we've heard a lot of conversation about stopping hedge funds from buying rental houses. They've bought up a ton of houses throughout the country. The Charlotte market that I work has been very much a target for the hedge funds. They love owning houses here. And the institutional investors, I don't think, are good for the market. Now, the way that they negotiated this one through the House and the Senate and the conference committee is that the only restriction is on institutional investors who own at least 350 single family homes. Okay. What they're going to leave as a loophole here, I'm just going to go ahead and tell y'all that those of us that practice real estate know when they buy these houses, they each get titled into their own LLC. So we go to pull them up and it's owned by the I2C blah, blah, blah LLC. So they just start changing the letters and the numbers in it to make it look like a different LLC, which makes it very hard to track, which means this is something that I think is pretty much lip service. But the other thing that I want you to notice here is that's only when they buy single family homes. All right. With an exemption, with an exemption for those purchasing or building specifically for the rental market. If you don't know about this, this is what's known as BTR, or neighborhoods that are built to rent. So if you're the buyer, the neighbor, the homeowner, you drive by, you're like, well, that looks like a cute little neighborhood. They're all for rent. So you're thinking, okay, so at least all the rentals are together. Now, we do know historically, the more renters that are in one community, the more challenging it is to keep it up because it doesn't belong to the renters. The neighborhoods that do the best over time with upkeep and landscaping and all of this tend to have homeowners in them. We all know this. For me personally, the bigger concern I have on BTR is because a build to rent neighborhood, they're building a new two-story single family home, little bit of brick accent, stone accent, vinyl. They look fine when they're built. It's gonna have granite. It's gonna have LVP, the luxury vinyl plank flooring. It's gonna be new. Got the smell of sheetrock. We love it. It's great. All the systems are new. So when they move in, it feels really good, which means you're less incentivized to go buy something because your rental is really nice. Now, I know that sounds terrible because I'm not saying you want to have all rentals be terrible, but I remember my early apartments, they weren't super flashy. They had popcorn ceilings and orange peel walls and had the European cabinets. Y'all remember those? They were bisque on the front and had that natural wood on the edge. It was ugly. And the laminate would peel off. It would peel off the countertops. And by the way, your hair dryer can melt the glue back down so you can smooth your laminate countertops. You're welcome. But when you live in a rental that's just not perfect, of course you start dreaming. You're like, I want something of my own because if I'm going to be the one that's hair drying the laminate countertop back down, I want it in my own house. So if you think about it, the rentals that are super brand new and very schwanky might take away that idea of moving because your first time house probably has popcorn ceilings, orange peel walls, European cabinets, and laminate counters. And so it feels like a step down from the rental that you're in, thereby eroding the psychology of the American dream. And I know that feels a little bit deep and weedy, but I feel very strongly about this because I've looked at, for example, college towns. When I went back to Tallahassee to speak with the Tallahassee Board of Realtors, if y'all didn't know, I started my college life at Florida State, and the dorms and the apartments were, eh. In fact, I was lucky because I was in an air-conditioned dorm, and there were non-air-conditioned dorms, which were basically some sweat houses and hot boxes, and it's crazy. But nowadays, oh my heavens, you would never let your precious pumpkin live in something that wasn't air-conditioned and perfect. So we're conditioning people from fairly early days to have perfection, and it continues it with the BTR. So the idea that the hedge funds can't buy houses anymore is gonna be something you see in the headlines, and yeah, they're still gonna buy and build whatever they want. Title 11, I'm really happy about Title 11. I was glad that this made it through the committee. The central bank digital currency is prohibited from being created by the Fed until 2030. That's like 5 minutes from now. Y'all, they're just trying to create a digital currency. Do you know why that's bad? I mean, even Dave Ramsey understands why it's bad, and he doesn't always have all the best ideas, but, he's got some good ones. Let me just tell you why we need a permanent ban on a digital currency. That means that every transaction you ever have is gonna be tracked. We're gonna get to that in just a second too. I don't want my transactions tracked. I wanna be able to put cash into the hand of the waitress because she can then put her tip in her pocket. I wanna be able to pay a teenager to come out and do some projects around the house, and so they can have a little pocket money. There is power in having folded money in your pocket, and they're taking that away eventually. But for right now, we got a respite. So good job, Congress, for getting us 2 seconds of relief on that. And then, of course, Title 12 says there's a provision clarifying no additional funds are authorized to implement the bill. So yay for that. So these are some good things, right? Well, you may have noticed that after we got all these headlines that said, hey, yay, we got our housing bill passed. This is great. The realtors are awesome. And then we saw this come up. Whoops, no, hang on, not that one. You'll just have to wait for that one. Oh, did it not make it into here? It didn't. Oh, there it is. Okay, so President Trump over on Truth Social had canceled the press conference and signing event for this bill until such time as the Senate will take up and pass the Save America Act. Now, please don't stop listening because your emotions partisan bubble up. Y'all, we all have to be bigger than this, no matter who you vote for or how you vote. Let's discuss. So, what you should know first of all is that this is also a bit of political theater because that bill, if it is not vetoed 10 days after passage, it becomes law automatically. And so the president right now is grandstanding on he wants the Save America Act looked at. But if he does not veto the Housing Act, it's still going to get done even without a press conference and a bill signing. He's not going to veto a housing bill, not when we're in the middle of this huge crisis where our younger generation is confronting the fact that it's so difficult to buy a home in so many markets. Now, I also want you to know something about that Save America Act because there were a couple of things I wanted you to pay attention to back in the main body of the bill. He's right to press for the Save America Act. He's right to press for voter ID and secure elections. If you look at the polling of the public and you take out any of the political division, the people who are in favor of voter ID and secure elections is north of 70%. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, Green, Independent, or whatever. The only ones who don't want secure elections are the DSA people, the Democrat Socialists of America, who are still thankfully pretty small, but the vast majority of Americans won't secure elections. We want Americans to vote for American leadership. So the fact that they won't take up this bill while they'll take up housing, pay attention, y'all, because why don't they look at the Save America Act? Because too many of them are relying on the votes of illegal voters. They do not have the right to vote. This is not their country. We have illegal people here. We have probably somewhere in 20 to 40 million. It might be 100 million. There's so many, nobody knows. All right, you're here, you're working, whatever. You don't get to vote. It's not your country. I don't get to go to Spain and vote. I don't get, well, of course, they're socialists. I don't get to go to England and vote. I don't expect to. Not my country, even if I went over there to live. Y'all. And then the other part of this too has to do with the amount of fraud that's happening in the election system. And the fraud is out there. He's right to say we should have secure elections. I should feel good about my vote being my vote when I go to the polls. So how does this mission with housing? Well, they have a disincentive to stop the illegal number when you're looking at the housing numbers, because part of the reason housing is so expensive, if not the bulk of the reason besides inflation, is because we have too many people here competing for housing. That is a demand issue, not a supply issue. The Housing Act that's being passed addresses the supply side. Do we need new houses? It depends on what county you're in and what town you're in. Some areas do and some areas don't. However, if the numbers were different when it comes to demand, you probably wouldn't have the exacerbated supply issue that we have. So when I look at that, I'm also going to look at the fact that we have visa holders in the US that are buying real estate and they're not permanent residents. So what happens if that program changes? Well, the demand would fall, which means prices would fall. Now, I'm okay with prices falling because it does mean that the generation behind me would have a chance to buy. I'm not moving anytime soon. It's okay if my price falls. However, these elected officials and most of your communities, you got a lot of people that are not willing for their numbers to go down. And in real estate, I know it's an anathema for me to say that prices should go down, but if you remove 20 million people from the demand side, prices will fall. I don't think the electorate is going to stomach that very well, even if they say occasionally they wish prices would correct, they know it's too expensive. They're not willing to watch their own equity go down. And our elected officials, y'all, you know this, if prices fall, then tax valuations eventually follow, which means property tax revenues fall, which means there's less to spend. It's all pretty connected, but he's right as president to ask for the SAVE Act to get passed. It's not going to happen though, because our elected officials have too many things going on in their particular happy spot of making money while they pretend to be public servants to make changes that would positively impact the next generation. And if you want to know why the generation Zoomers and the younger millennials, why they are very cynical about politics on either side of the aisle, why they are walking away in droves, and why they are very unhappy right now, their opportunities have been stolen from them and given to people who aren't American so that politicians can do whatever they want to do. That's what it boils down to. And before you come at me and say that this is not fair, there's great immigrants, blah, 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 I didn't say there weren't. A lot of great people who have followed the rules and are proud, patriotic Americans. I'm talking about the people who are not proud, patriotic Americans. They are here to take, not to give. That's two different kinds of people altogether. Now, that being said, if you like having conversations like this and you're ready to build your business in a different way, I do have a program called Catalyst, and you should check it out. Now, in the meantime, I want to show you where the other interplay comes in with the housing bill that has to do with that digital currency bit that I was talking about, where your freedoms are being stripped away from you bit by bit. I had a tweet that I put on the X day before yesterday, about flock cameras. And it's gotten quite a lot of attention from bots and trolls and also some normal people. But friends, when you get bots and trolls coming at you, you're over the target. I don't like flock cameras. I'll just tell you that right now. I know that I don't have privacy today like I had back when I was 18 years old at Florida State. And I say, thank you, Jesus, that we did not have cameras everywhere and we didn't have people with videos of everything you did. You could do stupid things as a young person and only your friends knew, and you could grow past that. I feel really bad for our young people now because if they make a mistake, it's held against them forever. And what a shame that we are canceling people for things that they did and said when hopefully they get converted and find Jesus and then have a whole new life. But the world doesn't allow you to have a new life. So when you think about these flock cameras, I've seen them a lot when I'm out running. Of course, my head was thinking originally looking at them on X that they're just in big cities. Well, I live in the town of Harrisburg. Harrisburg's about 25,000 people. And then my office in Concord's got 100,000 people. We're not a huge area, but the flock cameras are here. And then I saw them in Mississippi. I went down to speak with the small town hunting crowd, and what an amazing company they're building. I was out running in the backside of Mississippi and I see flock cameras at a neighborhood. And I'm like, y'all don't even know. Because here's the thing, the sign says that these flock cameras are for license plate reading. It says license plate reading. Did y'all catch that? But Flock, the company out of Atlanta, is not just reading the license plates, they are recording and uploading all the data about that vehicle to their cloud. Now, this would be if you have a dent in your bumper, if you've got a sticker on the back windshield, it's going to get all the information about your vehicle. So everything is stored. You realize that's my problem. I'm not in favor of crime in neighborhoods. And the idea for the HOAs is that if you can grab license tags and then you have a theft in the neighborhood, you got porch pirates or somebody gets their house broke into, you can figure out who did it. But you're going to have to notice this, y'all. It's recording so much information and then it goes to the flock cloud. Well, who has access to the flock data? The HOA does. Okay, so the HOA's got access to the data. Who else does? Local police do. Well, what we have already discovered is that law enforcement is abusing some of this data. And I obviously I'm a big fan, back the blue, but we had a few bad actors out there somewhere that are accessing this data. So my question was pretty real estate focused because obviously me not liking it doesn't mean that everybody else should agree with me. I'm a grown woman. I know that my opinions are mine and you bring me yours and we have us a good conversation. But from a real estate perspective, I hold a license from the state of North Carolina. I hold a license from the state of South Carolina, which means I am given the public trust. And when you talk about public trust, we have this very important task about exposing and declaring material facts. So, where do flock cameras come into material fact? Do I have a duty as a real estate professional to disclose where there are flock cameras that are recording the people who are thinking of buying and selling real estate? When I sent them the house, I said, hey, there's a house for sale over here in Bradford Park in Harrisburg. Lovely neighborhood. You buyers should know there's two flock cameras at the entrance, one in and one out. So if you go to look at that house and go do a little drive by, you're going to be recorded. If you go with me to look at it, we're going to be recorded. So you're thinking, but Lee Brown, if you're not doing anything wrong, what does it matter? It matters because the Fourth Amendment gives us the right as individuals not to have this kind of intrusion on our lives and to be recorded everywhere because y'all, I already mentioned how local police are tapping the data for their own purposes. We're also fully aware that fair housing violations have occurred forever because somebody somewhere has a bee in their bonnet about some other somebody somewhere. Who's to say that there won't be a nefarious use of all this data? I really don't like it when I show a house already that's got cameras everywhere because I have to tell my clients, don't say nothing. We're not talking in the house. We can't say a word until we're way down the street. We can't even talk in the driveway now because the Ring cameras can record us. And I don't want them recording our private conversation because that would damage my buyer's ability to negotiate correctly. And it would damage the sellers if they hear all of our information. And oh my gosh, why are we having this conversation? Why do I, as an American citizen, have to defend my right to have a conversation in the driveway of a house not being recorded and to defend my people driving in and out of neighborhoods without being recorded and sent up to the cloud for all kinds of purposes? And to the people who say the Fourth Amendment only protects you from the government. Um, y'all know the law enforcement is part of the government, right? And you know that if local law enforcement can access these flock camera data back programs, everybody can access it. These people sell data like it's candy, and you know this. So, on the real estate side, my question was very simple. Should the real estate commission of any state be looking at flock cameras and whether or not they should be disclosed to potential buyers coming in and out of neighborhoods? Should the multiple listing service that we belong to add a field that says this neighborhood does or does not have flock cameras? Now, if you tell me, but Lee Brown, you could be driving by another neighborhood, I could. You're absolutely right. However, if somebody is going to live in a community, I think they have the right to know if they're going to be recorded coming and going at all times, which also led me to wonder HOAs who sign up for these flock cameras and buy them, I understand they're like $3,000 a pop. So, yay, if your HOA is funded and can do it. My question, though, would be, did the HOA board understand that the flock is not just reading the license tag? Did they read the contract? Did they read the contract? And I asked this lovingly, knowing that it takes a special kind of person to be on the HOA board because that's a flock of Karens is what an HOA board is. It's very difficult, and that's one reason I had to update my hair from the one y'all saw several years ago. It was Karen hair. I'm actually not a Karen. I'm just a conspiracy girly, coincidence spotter. But when you think about the HOAs, yes, they're volunteers and yes, they're busy. But if you're signing up for something, you should read the contract or at least ask your AI to read the contract and tell you what it says. And then shouldn't that be up for a neighborhood vote? Shouldn't the neighbors have the right to say yes or no to cameras that are recording their every motion in and out of the neighborhood, recording all the details about their vehicle and then sending it up to the cloud? And by the way, I should probably add a little note here for all of you who are security and safety at all costs. I don't know how to tell you this, but sometimes the bad guys don't have license tags that they can be tracked to. Here in the Charlotte area, it's become a running joke and it's kind of sad how many temporary plates roam around this area. I mean, they're all South Carolina, they're printed off the internet, fake, 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 fake. So those people are driving in and out of neighborhoods doing whatever the heck they want. Their data goes up to the cloud, and for what? So you, the law-abiding citizen, all of your information's been sent up, but the bad guys, they're good to go. I mean, really, we should be taking a better look at these flock cameras. And if you want to know where they are and what's going on, you can look at dflock.org. But let me just show y'all, this came from dflock.org, which is a wonderful website where if you spot a flock camera, you can add it so we can figure out where they are in the country. This is an example of how the scan goes on your vehicle. It does catch your tag, but it also, on this truck, it caught the upgraded accessory back rack. It caught the fact that they had a Raider sticker on their car. And of course, I was curious about why an Alabama plates would have a Raider sticker, but that's just me being curious. Why does that need to be updated to the flock database because they went in and out of your neighborhood? That's my question there. So I'm just going to leave it with that. Let me glance over here and see if anybody got into the chat because I've been rambling here for just a moment. Don't see any in the chat. So that means whoever's going to comment is going to come back and comment later. Hey, what's up? And if you've got an opinion about these flock cameras, I'm so curious to know if you were paying attention to them, if you've noticed them around your area, and what you think about the real estate side of it. And how much, by the way, of our security are we willing to trade for the last semblance of privacy that we have? And when it comes to that, you look back at the housing side of things. If we're going to add housing, but we're not going to talk about the demand side, I think we're doing ourselves a huge disservice. So in the meantime, the clock is ticking on President Trump to sign this into law. There's some really good provisions to it. I'm glad that we had some work done for housing. By the way, if you are in and around real estate, whether you like these bills or not, you'll already see the most important place for you to be paying attention is your local planning and zoning and your local county commission, your local town, because there are still some local provisions that will hold up if they can withstand the idea of grabbing some of that grant money. Make sure you hit the bell to get notified next time I go live. Leave me a comment.